powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
Football at 4 on a happy hour Friday is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Adam Caplan is here, by the way. The Eagles rookies at camp today. They're running around the field over at the NovaCare complex. We actually had a little football on a Friday here. Adam Caplan, welcome back to the show. How are you, my friend?
Mike, good to be back with you. Yeah, we've got actual football. The veterans can't practice. At least the rookies are in. The 9 undrafted free agent guys have now signed their contracts. That's why the Eagles waited until Friday to announce that. But they got that done. So, yeah, we've got football.
Yeah, we got football, and we got some football news. By the way, some breaking news for football fans at the top of the hour. The Indianapolis Colts have released Nick Foles. So that might be it, Adam, for Nick Foles. We might not see this career, as Adam Andrew Brandt tweeted out, he has won the business of football. He has career earnings of $85 million, but I don't know that he latches on to another team.
Yeah, so he was actually owed $1.5 million fully guaranteed of his $3.5 million base salary. They told Nick weeks ago he knew he was out once they signed Gardner Minshew. In fact, I'm told that's why Minshew signed there, because they weren't going to keep Nick Foles. And Minshew thought, because he's got incentives in his contract, that maybe he'd have a chance to start a couple games before Richardson's ready. So here we go. Yeah, Nick's out there. Boy, he did not play well last season when he got thrown in there. Boy, he just looked like he was finished. But he'll have a chance to be a backup somewhere else, because the league does have trouble finding good backup quarterbacks.
It's weird, though. Nick has had an amazing run here. He won the Super Bowl. He had that 2019 run. He had the Chip Kelly run. But in any other uniform, he seemingly has struggled. In Jacksonville, the Rams, the Bears, he just has not been very good when he has been the starting quarterback.
No, he hasn't. In fact, if you remember, he got hurt with the Rams. He was going to retire. The Chiefs talked him out of it. And the rest is kind of history. And as you know, he went to the Eagles with the expectation is that he would just be a backup, and you never know what's going to happen with injuries. And it's just so important to have good backup quarterbacks. And that's why Marcus Mariota got $5 million this season, fully guaranteed. We could argue whether he's really worth it based on how poorly he played last season, but he fits the scheme. And, it's funny, Mike, the Eagles now have 4 quarterbacks. You and I talked about this earlier this week. And it's just funny how they draft a guy in the 6th round, and Tanner McKee is completely different from the other 3 quarterbacks.
Yeah, well, the quarterback factory always trying to get their hands on somebody. Hey, maybe he plays a couple preseason games, catches someone's eye. They pick up the phone and say, hey, we like what we saw from that guy. Hey, how about Dan Arnold, a veteran tight end? We talked about it during the draft that maybe the Eagles need to find someone to back up Dallas Goedert. Tell us a little bit about Dan Arnold's reputation around the league and where he might fit in on this roster.
All right, he's what we call a move tight end. He's not an inline tight end like Jack Stoll. Jack Stoll's the number 2 tight end. That's not in question. The question is, because this guy's an athlete, he's a former wide receiver at Wisconsin Platteville. In fact, I remember covering him for the 17 draft. He wasn't drafted, but there was a lot of talk about, okay, this guy, nobody's talking about him, but he's a really big-time athlete. And the Saints knew this. They brought him in. He spent 3 years with them. The Saints then cut him, went with the Cardinals. And then, because his tape was really intriguing, the Panthers signed him thinking like, hey, he could help them because he's a guy who you could split out. He's a slot, really a slot tight end. And then he went to Jacksonville. He was traded from the Panthers to the Jaguars. Didn't really do much there, but when he catches it, Mike, it's usually more downfield. He's more of a vertical tight end. And that's what Grant Calcaterra does. And we know about Calcaterra's problems in college with concussions. Remember, he retired briefly for a year and then came back. So what this does is it brings some competition for that number 3 role.
Yeah, Dan Arnold, a veteran's been around. He's bounced around for a bunch of teams. His last 2 years in Jacksonville, and then kind of fell out of favor last year with Jacksonville. And they had Ingram down there last year with with Doug Peterson. Right, yeah. I mean, you have Evan Ingram. Peterson obviously went to Ingram, and Arnold kind of got bounced out of there. So he's available. He signs with the Eagles yesterday. Dan Arnold had a big year, I think, in Arizona a couple of years. Not a big year, but his biggest year. He had like 30 catches down there with maybe it was the Saints or the Cardinals or Carolina. He's been all over the place, this guy. But he signed yesterday, and there you go, a little insight there. Let's look around the NFC East. We talk a lot about the Eagles and what's going on there. Let's look at Washington, Adam, and get what are you hearing about their draft class and what Washington was able to accomplish at the draft?
Yeah, we kind of thought going in, Mike, and I didn't get the right corner, but they drafted Emmanuel Forbes. And he is really thin, but very gifted. Lots of forced turnovers. This is what they were looking for. I know Washington, from what I understand, they didn't think they were good enough for corner, so they added Forbes in the first round. And then one of my favorite players for the draft, Jartavius Martin, who's a safety. He was the other safety at Illinois. The reason why he went higher than the guy that the Eagles drafted, and Sidney Brown, is because this guy has got more versatility. He could play slot corner. He could play outside corner. He could play safety. He's more of a free safety. He's not a guy that you're going to play in the box like Sidney Brown did at Illinois. But this kid is really gifted. Eagles liked him. Eagles also, I believe, had second-round grades on him. But this guy is really, really talented, and he should start. That's another position. And, knowing Ron Rivera's personnel control, this is what happens. He addresses defense when they needed help with the offensive line. Now, they did draft in the third round Stromberg, who's a center. Fourth round, Brady McDaniels, who's a guard, and these guys will compete for roles on the team. But they thought they had some weaknesses on defense. But the issue for them is on offense, specifically at quarterback, which they didn't address, and the offensive line. And they didn't address it high enough. We'll have to see what happens. But that's where the Eagles' defensive line and their front and their ability to get to the quarterback, that's when they play Washington, Mike. That's, to me, where it's going to be one in the trenches, particularly Eagles' defensive line versus the Washington offensive line.
Yeah, Emmanuel Forbes was their first-round pick, the corner, and obviously Washington finished at the bottom of the NFC East last year. Emmitt Smith said he thought the Eagles are better, and that means they're still better than the Cowboys. But the Cowboys generally draft pretty well. They have found some pieces in the draft over the years. Their problems with cap management, they're terrible doing that kind of stuff. But what'd you think of their draft?
So, Mike, we thought going in that their biggest weakness was at defensive tackle, but we just didn't know that Mozzie Smith would be going that high. And look, they felt that he was worth the pick. He's their first rounder here, super gifted. We weren't sure if he's going to go at 32. Was he going to go early second round? So they got him where they thought they got a good value at 26 overall. And the guy's a player. Look, he's a big-time run stopper. Greg Cosell told us there's some upside as a pass rusher. And Dallas was very weak up the middle last season, and that's why they went there. They got overshown as who probably could play inside or outside linebacker. They run more of a 34 front under Dan Quinn. And this kid and this is another area for them they needed to improve. But the two picks that they love, they're Mozzie Smith and Luke Schoonmaker. Now, Schoonmaker, who played at Michigan, he played at a private school he played at prep school in Connecticut, and he was supposed to go third or fourth round. Now the Cowboys had a higher grade on him, and he should start. Remember, they lost their starting tight end Dalton Schultz to the Texans in free agency, so he should start over Jake Ferguson. And it was obviously a hole for them. Right now, Mike, if Mozzie Smith's a player, that's really going to help the run defense where they're very inconsistent. And they've got a ton of depth at corner, but that's an area where they're just not good enough. They got like 6 guys, but none of them other than Diggs are good enough. And Diggs, as you know, gives up plays.
Yeah, I like Mozzie Smith, by the way. I thought that was a very smart pick by them in an area, as you mentioned, probably their biggest need. I like that pick for them. Interested, what do you make of the story with how they're going to use Parsons this year? He said he's bulking up to play primarily defensive end.
See, he's played strong side linebacker. He's played defensive end. He's a guy that when you look at him, he's physically imposing. He could run, get upfield. He's an incredible football player. The term is he plays bigger than his listed size of just over 6'2". That's why, because remember he's played middle linebacker before. He played middle linebacker in high school. Penn State used him in a variety of ways, and Dan Quinn's done a great job. He's an unbelievable football player, and to me, Mike. Now, see, here's the thing: even if he does line up with his hand down, it doesn't mean that he's going to play a true defensive end, because a defensive end at a 34 front is really not a DN. You're going to have to stand up because he's not going to be tall enough. He's not going to be long enough. But he's one of the best defensive players in the league. They've got a lot of talent. Remember, they added Stephon Gilmore. They got him from the Colts, who's in the twilight of his career. And it's just a matter of putting this stuff together. But I know Eagle fans love this. Dallas never could put it together because the issues with the coaching staff. They forced Kellen Moore out, who's a good offense coordinator. Mike McCarthy's going to call the plays. He's very dry, not imaginative. Now, remember, they also added Brandon Cooks via trade, who still can play. He's a really good football player. We'll see how it all fits. But to me, this roster seems to always underachieve for one reason or another.
By the way, DeAndre Swift, the new Eagles running back, was given the number 0. He was asked why he chose 0. His answer will win every Eagle fan over, I would imagine. He says, that's how many times the Cowboys have been to the NFC Championship game in my lifetime.
Did he say that?
That's what his answer was.
Really? I love this guy. I love it. See, I'm impartial, but I can't stand the star. It just bothers me, growing up here, Mike. So that's awesome. He's a Philly guy.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Good for him.
That's
awesome.
How many times the Cowboys have been to the NFC Championship game in my lifetime. 0. So that's what jersey number he is wearing.
Yeah. Because they lost the championship game, I think, to the Panthers, maybe? Who did they lost deep in the playoffs, like a couple decades ago in the late 90s. That is incredible, man. Wow, good for DeAndre Swift.
Nice answer. Adam Caplan, football at 4. Let's look at the Giants here. I mean, obviously, the Giants made the playoffs last year, put them in position now to have everybody kind of see if they're going to take that next step. What did we think of this class that they have coming in? They got the corner they took in round 1.
Yeah, we thought it would either be corner or receiver. I'm a little surprised that they didn't draft receiver, though, but it's possible that the guy they wanted went to the. Let's put it this way. I thought the Giants, Mike, had two pretty specific needs. Center is a problem. We'll get to that in a second. And wide receiver. Now, they got Banks at the corner you mentioned, but I thought there were 2 receivers they would have drafted had one of them got to 25. Actually, 3 of them. Smith and Jigba 120. Zay Flowers 123, although they didn't really need a slot, but he's a great football player. But the guy I know they really like was Jordan Addison from USC, who went right before them at 24 to the Vikings. So they took a need position, and Deonte Banks, who a lot of us thought would go middle first round, he got drafted later. And Adoree Jackson, one of the starting corners, was on the last year of his deal. So this made a lot of sense, and this is a good pick for them. And then they went with John Michael Schmitz, one of the top 2 centers for the draft. He should start right away, which was a very problem position with him. John Feliciano was below average, and he's gone. So to me, this is a smart pick for them. I like what they did. And then Jalen Hyatt, one of the premier deep threats for this draft, but he's not physical, but he can run. Receiver was a problem for them last season. It was a big problem, so they added there. And they got Eric Gray as a nice backup running back. Their number 2 running back role is kind of open now between Gray, who was just drafted by them out of Oklahoma in the 5th round, and Matt Breida, who's been around a long time. So, look, it's about addressing remaining needs. They did that, particularly for the future. And, look, every team addressed needs here. The Eagles still have the best roster. By the way, they're still favored to win the division. You're right. The Commanders are picked by Vegas to be the 4th team. In fact, they've got some of the longest odds to win their division, the Commandos, as I call them. And I guess what happens is, Mike, it's a quarterback-driven league, and no one's believing in Sam Howell, unfortunately, at quarterback for Washington.
Yeah, he'll be an interesting one. I think Sam Howell's story is kind of one to keep an eye on. Remember, we talk about the draft. There was a time where Sam Howell, many people thought he might be the first pick in the draft. Now, he slipped very far, the 5th round, but maybe Washington sees what people thought he was his junior year at North Carolina, where many people thought he would be a possible number 1 overall pick. Who knows? The NFC East always very competitive. Real quick, Adam, you mentioned the rookies are in today. I guess a couple first-year players allowed to participate. You had Mario Goodrich, Kennedy Brooks. Mm-hmm. What are these? What is being accomplished at these events?
It's really important, and I get it. Hurts is not throwing to him, Mariota is not throwing to him, but Tanner McKee is. It's just for the rookies and undrafted free agents. It's their first exposure to the offensive defensive schemes, and as coaches will tell you, the players are always swimming upstream, like they're just trying to figure things out. This is their first exposure to it. And, for a guy like Hurts, yes, he's not there. He can't be by rule. But once they get further into the OTAs, remember, they don't have a mandatory camp. They're one of two teams, by the way, are done early. The Browns and the Eagles, the two teams are done after the first week of June. But what it is getting exposure to the schemes and these coaches and how these guys have to work and being coached and being and watching tape with these guys. It is very important. And, when I first started covering the league, guys would not be signed and there would be problems. Not anymore. The Eagles did sign a bunch of players, as you know, yesterday, but the key is they get waivers anyway now, so they could go to these camps. But the fact of the matter is, for Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Ringo, Sidney Brown, guys who are going to play year one, Brown, Smith, and Carter, Ringo not as much. This is where you start hearing your coach's voice and what they want you to do. It's very, very important, Mike. No, it's a great question. And, by the way, Tyler Steen, his first work at right guard. This is obviously, wow, this is huge. In fact, I remember Jordan Mailata's rookie camp, Mike. It's a funny story. Remember, because he put on a helmet for the first time as an NFL player?
Yeah.
He didn't know what he was doing. He didn't realize he's not allowed to hit anyone. He starts driving guys out of bounds and like, no, you can't do that. It's pretty funny.
Thinking back on that. By the way, Nolan Smith, he spoke today, as did Jalen Carter. Smith said he's already learning to be a better player through these things, and that Carter mentioned that you can already see a winning mindset here at these camps in Philly. So a couple nuggets from Eagles rookie camp today up at the NovaCare complex, as that will be something to kind of keep an eye on this summer to see how the rookies progress as they get ready for training camp, which seemingly will be here before we know it. Adam Caplan, I know you're getting ready for the Sixers and Celtics tonight.
Cannot wait. It's going to be hard. It was only one game. Yes, it was ugly. Embiid did the best that he could. It's going to be hard because even if the Sixers win tonight, it'd be hard to see Celtics not winning Game 4. But that first game, Mike, I got to tell you, was something else. As a diehard Sixer fan my whole life, that was a pretty special game. It's a shame that they got evaporated Game 2, but it's a game-to-game business in the playoffs. They'll regroup. The fans will be out of their minds, and they got to take it, obviously, one game at a time here. It'll be fun, and the guys have to rebound. The first, Mike, 5 or 6 minutes of the game are extremely important to this team. They have to get off to a good start.
All right, a lot of fun tonight. Of course, you can listen to the Sixers right here on 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, when the Eagles are back, you can listen to them right here on 97.3 ESPN. Adam Caplan, you can listen to him on the Inside the Birds podcast. Get that wherever you listen to your podcast. Adam, have a good weekend.
You too, thank you.
All right, Adam Caplan, everybody, here for Football at 4 on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN.